You know the story, right? It's one of America's oldest, spookiest mysteries. An entire colony of people, men, women, children, just gone, vanished. The only thing left behind was a single, cryptic word carved into a post. It's the stuff of ghost stories. But what if that whole story, the one we've all heard, is completely wrong? What if the colonists weren't lost at all? What if the real story is even more fascinating than the myth? Well, a ton of new evidence is coming to light, and it looks like we might finally have to rewrite the ending to this 400-year-old cold case.
Okay, so let's set the stage. The year is 1587. About 115 English settlers land on Roanoke Island in modern-day North Carolina. And this isn't some military boys club, this is the real deal. Families ready to build a town and a new life. Their governor, John White, has to make a quick trip back to England for more supplies. Should have been a few months tops. But then, disaster. A massive war breaks out with Spain. We're talking the Spanish Armada. Every single available ship in England is needed for the war effort. So for 3 long years, the Roanoke colony is completely on its own, totally isolated. And when John White finally gets a ship and returns in 1590, what he finds is what's been haunting us ever since.
I mean, can you even imagine? John White finally makes it back. His daughter is there. His granddaughter, Virginia Dare, the first English baby born in the Americas, is also there. He expects to find a thriving town. Instead, he finds silence. The houses are gone, but they've been carefully taken down, not smashed to bits. There's a defensive wall, a palisade, but there are no bodies, no signs of a fight. It's just empty. And then he sees it, carved into a big wooden post, one word, Croatoan. That single word, right there, is the heart of this entire mystery.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll look at what John White really found that day. Then we'll get into the backstory of the whole Roanoke experiment, because this wasn't their first rodeo. After that, we are going to unpack that famous clue, Croatoan, and figure out what it actually meant. We'll run through all the wild theories people have come up with, and then we'll get to the really cool part. The new clues archaeologists are literally digging up from the ground. And at the end, we'll try to answer that big question. Is this mystery finally solved? All right, let's zoom in on that moment of discovery. It's August 18th, 1590, which, by the way, was his granddaughter's 3rd birthday. He and his men are walking up to the settlement, calling out, hoping to hear something. But all they get back is silence.
What's so wild about this scene isn't just what's missing, it's what's not there. There's no sign of a battle. And here's the crucial detail. White had given them a secret code. He said if you're in trouble, if you're forced to leave, carve a Maltese cross above your destination. There was no cross. That told him right away that they left on their own terms. Their boats were also gone, so they didn't just wander off into the forest. And the houses, they'd been carefully taken apart. You have to remember, back then, nails and wooden beams were incredibly valuable. You wouldn't just leave them behind. So this wasn't a scene of panic. This was a planned move.
Now, to really get why they might have packed up and left, we have to talk about what happened before they even got there. See, the lost colony of 1587 was actually the second attempt at Roanoke. And the first one, well, let's just say it was a total disaster that poisoned the well for everybody who came after. So you have 2 totally different missions. The first one in 1585 was all soldiers, a military group, and they were just awful guests. They completely relied on the local Secotan tribe for food, and relations got so bad that the English ended up attacking a village and beheading their chief. So when a ship showed up, the soldiers couldn't wait to get out of there. Now, fast forward to 1587. This is our group. It's not soldiers, it's families, potters, farmers, you name it. They're here to build a home, but they're walking into a hornet's nest, into a place where the locals have every reason to hate and fear the English.
And this really shows you what was at stake. Just a few weeks after they landed, Governor White's daughter gave birth to Virginia Dare. She was this huge symbol for what they were trying to do. She represented a real future, a new beginning, an English life taking root in America. This wasn't just some abstract land grab. These were parents and kids with real dreams facing down some pretty incredible odds.
Okay, now we get to the main event. That word, Croatoan. For hundreds of years, we've treated it like this spooky, unsolvable riddle. But what if it wasn't a mystery at all? What if it was just an address? This is the one question that changes everything. We've been so obsessed with the mystery of the word that we forgot to ask what the word actually meant to the people who were there. You know, what did John White think when he saw it? Because his own reaction is the key that unlocks this entire thing.
Right. So the myth is that it's this ghostly final word. The reality is much more practical. Croatoan wasn't some random nonsense. It meant three very specific things. First, it was an island about 50 miles away, what we now call Hatteras Island. Second, it was the name of the Native American tribe that lived on that island, a tribe that was very friendly with the English. And third, and this is the most important part, it was the prearranged signal. It was the message they had all agreed on.
And here is the absolute bombshell. The mystery of the lost colony was never a mystery to John White. In his own journal, he says that when he saw Croatoan without the distress cross, he was greatly joyed. He wasn't scared. He was relieved. He knew exactly where they went. They were safe with their allies. The only tragedy was that a massive storm, basically a hurricane, rolled in. It almost wrecked his ship and forced his crew to abandon the search. He was stopped by bad weather, not a paranormal event. The colony wasn't lost. Contact was.
So you might be thinking, okay, case closed. They just moved. Well, not so fast. Because no one from England ever officially made it there to check, a huge information vacuum opened up. And over the next few centuries, that vacuum got filled with all kinds of theories about what really happened to them.
Basically, four main ideas took hold. The one that makes the most sense, of course, is that they just integrated with the native tribes. Then you've got the more dramatic theories, that they were all massacred by an enemy tribe, that they tried to sail home and drowned, or that the Spanish found them and wiped them out.
Now that massacre story got really popular, especially once the Jamestown colony was founded. But the evidence for it is pretty shaky. You have Captain John Smith claiming that Chief Powhatan told him he killed them. But you gotta look at the context, right? Powhatan had every reason to say that to scare the pants off the new guys in Jamestown. It was a power move. And then another writer kind of spiced up the story years later, but it reads more like propaganda than fact. And here's the biggest problem with the massacre theory. There is zero, and I mean zero, archaeological evidence of a slaughter. Anywhere.
So that brings us back to the most logical theory, assimilation. They just joined the local tribe to survive. And this isn't just a guess. Check this out. Over 100 years later, in 1709, an explorer named John Lawson is in the area. And he writes that the Hatteras Indians told him that some of their ancestors were white people, and he even notes that some of them had gray eyes, which was unheard of. They were telling a story that perfectly matched the clue on the post from a century earlier.
So for centuries, that's kind of where the trail went cold. You had a clue, some shaky stories, and some interesting oral traditions. But now we have modern science. Archaeology is picking up this very cold case, and what they're finding is giving us the hard physical proof we've been missing.
So the first huge breakthrough came from a hidden message on a 400-year-old map. Researchers were looking at John White's own map of the area and noticed these little paper patches on it. Using some high-tech imaging, they were able to see through one of the patches, and hiding underneath was a symbol for a fort, maybe drawn in invisible ink. It wasn't at Roanoke, it was inland. It looked like they had a secret Plan B, a Site X. And this secret spot was about 50 miles inland from Roanoke, a much safer location, away from the coast. So archaeologists started digging there, and what did they find? Bingo. They found English pottery that they can date to the exact time the colony was there. This suggests that at least some of the colonists split off from the main group and headed for this secret fort.
But the real smoking gun? It's been found at the one place the signpost pointed to all along, Hatteras Island, the home of the Croatoan. Archaeologists have been digging at old village sites there, and they're finding tons of English artifacts. And we're not talking about a few traded beads. We're talking about clear evidence of English people living and working right alongside the Native Americans for a long, long time.
This quote from the head archaeologist, Scott Dawson, really says it all. We have buckets of hammer scale. Now, hammer scale is basically blacksmith dust. It's the tiny bits of metal that flake off when you're forging iron. It's not something you trade. You only find buckets of it if there's a blacksmith actually set up and working there for years. They found an English blacksmith shop right in the middle of a Native American village. That's not a visit, that's moving in.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces on the table. We have the clue they left. We have John White's journal saying he knew what it meant. We have Native American oral history. And now we have archaeological proof from two different spots. So, what story does that tell us? Is the mystery finally solved?
Well, the story that's emerging isn't about a mysterious vanishing act. It's a story about survival. It seems pretty clear the colonists realized no one was coming for them, so they made a smart choice. They packed up, left a note, and split into at least two groups. Some went inland to that secret fort, and the main group went to live with their allies on Hatteras Island.
And as the years went by, they just stayed. They integrated. They became part of the community. Their bloodline wasn't lost. It was just absorbed into a new American family.
And that leaves us with one last big question. If the evidence so clearly points to a story of survival and assimilation, why are we all still so obsessed with the spooky ghost story? Maybe it's just because a mystery is more fun than a practical solution. It's easier to imagine they all just disappeared into thin air than it is to imagine them changing, adapting, and becoming part of something new. But the evidence is telling us they didn't vanish into a myth. They just went home.